I feel like I have to swear during my speech. Good morning, everyone. It is so great to be here. Thank you so much, first and foremost, Executive Director Mark Bernard. Thank you so much to President Tiger Stockbridge, and thanks to Jimmy Durkin for making sure we all got out here today. And having all that prepared speeches. I'm taking my talking to Jimmy Durkin too, everybody. Just so everybody. Brothers and sisters, my name is Dianna DiZoglio. I am your state auditor. Before you all run out of the room right now, which people tend to do when I say that I'm the auditor, I don't audit any of you. I'm not the IRS. I cannot look at your personal tax returns, your bank accounts. So hopefully that puts everybody at ease. I actually instead audit the government for all of you. Yes, that's not better, right? I am the people's auditor for the state of Massachusetts, and it is my responsibility to make sure that our state government is not wasting and abusing our taxpayer dollars, but also to operate state programs. Yes, that's a good thing. Also to audit those state programs, their processes, their procedures in different state entities, and make sure that they're doing their very best on all of our behalves. It's been my humble honor to have been elected to this role just recently, back in 2022, and I couldn't have done that without your support, without your endorsement, so thank you, AFSCME. I've been working really hard. And one of the things I've been working really hard on is this initiative to audit the state legislature. Now, a little bit about myself. I feel like it's important to tell you all a little bit about my background so you can see how we got to this position of wanting to even audit the state legislature. Where does something like that even come from, right? I was born to a 17-year-old single mom in the city of Methuen, right up on the New Hampshire border. Gonna be going across that New Hampshire border to support Joyce Craig for governor soon. But I moved around a lot during my childhood based on where my mom could find work. She was a young nurse's aide, and moved mostly back and forth between Methuen and Lawrence during my childhood, depending on wherever she could find work. And grew up housing insecure. A lot of times we couch surfed. Didn't have an apartment, stayed with friends, slept in the same beds as my mom's friends' kids, and was very grateful to have those supports in a community like the Merrimack Valley, which I'm so grateful to have been able to have been raised in. From there, I graduated from Methuen Public School, went off to our local community college, which was an associate's degree that I was able to afford thanks to our state's investments in families like ours. And from there, I was able to get a scholarship to become the first in my family to graduate. Friends, I understood that it was only through the investments of others that someone like me was able to see any type of success. And knowing that inspired me to give back to my community in whatever way I could. And since I couldn't do so financially, I went into community service. I worked at nonprofits. I served in a young teen girls' home, working with young teen survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. I served at Girls Inc., working in their after-school program. I worked at the United Teen Equality Center in the city of Lowell, in their street outreach program, and serving as their cultural arts coordinator. I was doing all of these things while simultaneously hustling, waiting tables, and cleaning people's houses. Because as many working families like us know, you might love what you do for a day job, but it does not always afford you with the opportunity to live with a standard of dignity in the community that you are working hard to serve. That is why it is so important that we have labor organizations like AFSCME fighting every single day for working families across our communities. Friends, it was during that time that I was working all these different jobs in the community, working all these side hustles. I got offered a job working at the State House. I will be honest with you, I had no idea at that time in my life what a state representative even did. Didn't really know what happened at our State House, really wasn't educated much about state government. But I got offered this job porque yo puedo hablar un poquitito en español, because I can speak a little bit in Spanish. And the person needing somebody to come and work in his office was a state rep that wanted someone who spoke some Spanish and came from the community he was representing. So I got offered this job opportunity. And I just remember thinking, great. My first job out of college. This is really cool. I mean, I have no idea what happens at the State House, but as long as I get to work in my community, sounds great. And I went to go work at the State House. And I learned about all the great things that our state government, in particular our state legislature, can do, from investing in early education and care. Thank you to our workers in early education and care, to investing in developmental services, thanks to all of our DDS workers out there, to investing in transportation, to investing in healthcare, to making sure that we are, like this has been said multiple times, protecting women's rights, fighting for social justice, fighting for our civil rights across the board. I learned about how our state legislature can work to protect workers' rights and uplift our shared values. But I also, friends, during that very short time working up on Beacon Hill as a legislative aide, I learned about the flip side, about how our state legislature can operate when there is no accountability. And during my short time working there, this was many years ago, I was a younger woman in my 20s at the time, and during my short time working there, I was sexually harassed in our own House of Representatives. And the way that they thought it was appropriate to make that harassment stop happening was to fire me. That way the problem would go away. Problem solved, right? No more harassment. But they didn't just fire me due to those circumstances pertaining to that harassment. They required that on my way out the door, that I sign away my right to talk about what I had seen, witnessed, and experienced behind those closed doors up at our State House amongst some of the most powerful politicians in Massachusetts. But I didn't let them get rid of me. I didn't let them keep me quiet. And I didn't leave state government like they told me to do. I instead decided to run for state representative myself. Let me tell you, when I was able to walk back through those doors in the same chamber that dismissed me, I knew it was my responsibility to fight like hell for other working families who have also, and look, maybe for different reasons, but who have also, in some way or another, been dismissed, been ignored, been disenfranchised by the powerful and the privileged, and by a system in our state government that still is not working for families like ours. I took on that fight regarding transparency and accountability in our House of Representatives. I then moved to the state Senate. After 6 years of service as a state rep, I moved into the state Senate, where I served for 4 years, fighting for transparency and accountability for workers' rights, making sure that those types of agreements that, by the way, use our taxpayer dollars to silence victims of harassment, discrimination, abuse, potential assault, those who may have witnessed corruption in our own state agencies, we are able to, in Massachusetts, abuse tax dollars to hurt and silence workers across our state agencies right now. It is absolutely unacceptable, and that's a fight that I took on in the state Senate. Now, we know that our state legislature has a group of employees right now who's trying to unionize. They are trying to unionize, and they are fed up with the bullshit. I swore for you. I had to do it. I felt the pressure. They're fed up. They're fed up, friends. They're fed up with the games. They're fed up with the mistreatment. They're fed up with the toxic work environment. They're fed up with the bullying. They're fed up with the power trips of a couple of legislative leaders who think that because they got elected for a few years, that makes them all powerful and able to dictate to people instead of listening to them. They are fed up, and they have been working to unionize, to prevent harassment, discrimination, abuse, and a toxic work environment from continuing to occur. And when I got elected to state auditor, I had vowed to continue to work alongside of those workers in our state legislature to uplift their voices, especially knowing what I myself had experienced in that very chamber. I know that those issues that those workers are facing right now are your issues. I know, brothers and sisters, that you stand with those workers in our state legislature. And as state auditor, I can't go in and change things in the legislature and make things right that should be right. But what I can do is I can shine a light on what is happening and where some of the breakdowns are. Through an audit, I would be able to look at some of those processes again, look at some of those procedures, look at whether or not things like sexual harassment are even happening the way that they're supposed to. When I was a senator, I had staffers come to me and say they still hadn't been trained appropriately. Making sure that they're getting adequate training, making sure that systems are not breaking down. And of course, looking at the potential misuse of our taxpayer dollars that might be funding still things like those non-disclosure agreements using our tax dollars by some of these powerful politicians. Making sure that our tax dollars in general are not being misappropriated. And just making sure that there is some accountability in a system where we are supposed to have checks and balances, but where our state legislative leaders are ruling instead with an iron fist. Not as leaders, but more like management. More like management. We need bold and meaningful change. Friends, we talk about ballot questions. There's a reason why there are so many ballot questions this year. You want to know why question 2 had to go to the ballot? For something as simple as making sure that we're not failing kids out of high school because of one high-stakes test in our underserved communities? The legislature's failure to act. Why do we have to send it to the ballot that workers in our rideshare industry, an industry that has been misclassifying their employees in order to prevent themselves as a big corporation, a predatory industry, as big corporations where they've misclassified their workers in places like Uber and Lyft to get out of paying for things like PFML for our working families, to get out of paying for things like unemployment insurance, to get out of paying into our workers' comp system. Why do we need to send an issue to the ballot to vote just to allow those workers to unionize? Because our legislature doesn't think it's important enough to take up and act upon it. Because of the dysfunction up on Beacon Hill right now. Now, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. We cannot continue to allow these so-called leaders, Beacon Hill bosses, to to continue to do their business behind closed doors, out of the sight of the public, in the middle of the night, with no recorded roll calls, without us stepping up and doing something. We have an opportunity this year to make real change, but it is going to take us all showing up in November and dragging out our friends and dragging out our families and telling them to vote yes on question 1. Now, this audit cannot solve all of the problems on Beacon Hill. It can't change the toxic culture that exists inside the State House. But what it can do is make sure that you and I are aware of what's actually taking place. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. You can't fix a problem if you don't even know if it exists. So our office is looking to shine a light on some of the potentially challenging areas so that we can make recommendations for improvement, so that those of us in our communities who have been working hard to pass these issues and to make real change, so that we know what's working, what's not working, how we need to strategize to actually make a difference. I cannot do this without you. We have a unique opportunity. I am asking every single one of you, please go out there, advocate for this issue. This issue is hugely important. People hear audit, what's the big deal? It's a really big deal right now. We have the most powerful politicians in the state of Massachusetts refusing to tell taxpayers how they're spending our tax dollars, refusing to cooperate with an audit that every other state entity, even our courts, receive. They're violating current law, by the way, by doing that right now. We shouldn't even need this ballot question. But we are going to pass this ballot question regardless, because we need to make it crystal clear that the general court is subject to accountability, is subject to being accountable, as our Constitution says, at all times to the people of the Commonwealth. I want to thank you so much for letting me talk today.